their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Kind of looking back on them, they'll all have their own story. I think we were trying to be aggressive, on all those downs. They were kind of one of them. That last one was kind of a longer yardage, kind of situation type thing when we were throwing the ball to Adam out in the flat area, deeper flat area. And then we were just trying to activate JJ on a kind of a 2nd and 10. Thought we'd get a little bit more on the first down play call. Ended up kind of, checking the ball down and getting right into that 2nd and 11, 2nd and 10, and tried to activate something, and Slay made a good play.
Okay, so KOC, and then we had a clip on Purple Daily of Kirk Cousins being asked about the interceptions too, and they both have said kind of the same thing, which is that all 3 interceptions have their own story.
Yep.
They all have their own journey.
Yep.
Their own family.
They
all
all
have their
started
own
in a
history.
different place. They all started in a different place. They were all going to end up in a different. Each one of them tells a story that's very different.
If we go to interceptionancestry.com, we can go and trace the roots of all the interceptions going back. Oh, if you look at this one, it actually traces back to Kirk's mindset in college, which is because of the coach that he had. That if you go back over here.
Interception 1 was a very bad one, a very, very bad interception. The second one was heartbreak, just a heartbreaking play. I love that.
The third one was necessary recklessness because you're desperately trying to come back from down.
Yes, sir. It's a great band,
17 points.
You like that?
Yeah.
You like that?
Necessary recklessness. All right, well, welcome into Mackie and Judd here. If you missed Vikings Vent Line on Purple Daily, we also have a day later recap episode of Purple Daily. You can find those on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feed over on Mackie and Judd and the SKOR North YouTube channel. Please click subscribe. We're going to hit you with some Viking statements day after a devastating, somewhat embarrassing loss, national TV, another primetime failure. I know Judd is going to continue to hit the panic button, and he is going to continue to stoke the fire. And so I'm going to cut Judd off with my first statement right now.
All right.
And I'm going to tell you, it's my first statement, the Vikings will still finish above 500. This loss, while ugly, was expected. In fact, they've either played the schedule exactly how it should play out, or even a game better than it should play out, depending on, because they've been underdogs in both these games. So if you thought they stole one at home against the Packers in week 1, then maybe they're out in front of this thing. But again, just perspective here. I had them starting 1-1. And then I don't remember exactly. I have to go look at exactly. But I had them starting 1-1 with a loss at Philadelphia, and so that's my biggest takeaway is they're pretty much in line. And I had them winning 11, losing at Philadelphia and winning 11.
Yeah.
So it was ugly. We'll talk more about it. We'll get into some of the critiques and whatnot. But just taking a step back, having some perspective, I think the Vikings will be fine. I think Kevin O'Connell was absolutely going to go through some growing pains as a first-year head coach. Kirk on Monday night in Philadelphia was never a recipe for a massive game and great performance. It never really has been in his career in some of these situations. So I am calm. I am calm today.
So off that point, here's my question then. So how far, and this is not saying that the Vikings can't have a successful year, but saying what you just said, how far can Kirk take this team, even with O'Connell as his coach, becomes the question. So, they can win 10 games, 11 games. But if the reality is that you're going to get to a playoff game, the first or second round, and it's going to be an incredibly tough game. I mean, a good team is going to try to kick your ass potentially on the road. Yep. What's your faith that the KOC-Kirk combination can achieve what clearly in 2019 the Zimmer-Kirk combination couldn't achieve?
Well, it would be a game like that, right? You'd be going to Philadelphia or San Francisco or whatever. 100%. And so my faith on September 20th, 2022, 2 games into the partnership, is very low that they would, let's say they get in at 9 wins or 10 wins, they go on the road and they play San Francisco or something in the first round, or they play the Rams or whatever. My faith right now is very low. But I think it was unrealistic to expect that, all right, you're going to play Green Bay and Philadelphia with a first-year head coach and and a new defensive scheme, and everything's going to look the way that it's going to look in December. That's a completely unrealistic expectation. I expected some bumps in the road. I even had them losing a home game against Chicago early because I think everything before the bye is just there's 6 games before the bye. Finish 3-3, get to the bye as you're building this thing. And last night fell into the bucket of a road bump. Am I a little annoyed that the mission to quiet Kirk's mind with a new system, and you've got a new player-friendly set of coaches, and Kirk's going to get to spread the ball around in a Kirk-friendly system that fits his strengths, and he's going to meet with his head coach for more than 45 minutes just once a week. And all of this is going to culminate. Would I like to have seen it culminate in dramatic fashion last night with like a second-half comeback? Yes. Because it didn't happen, does that mean that the whole thing is off the rails? No. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of season left. I want to see this play out.
All right. My first statement is this. Playing off of that, now we find out. So, like, since the day O'Connell got the job, he's done a very good job of talking about adversity is going to hit. I know that. It's my job to take care of that. And look, I mean, you're going to lose games. So this is not a player being arrested. This is not some terrible, terrible thing. But you know what this is? This is the first adversity that Kevin O'Connell's Vikings have hit. And with a tough game against a Detroit team that's not very good, I don't think, defensively, but certainly could score points, you have to come back on a short week now, and it's not going to be probably the easy games that we became used to for a long time against the Lions. And so now we find out. Now the plan is in action. It's in motion. What do you do to get back on track? Because, Phil, to your point, there should be an opportunity here to certainly get some wins. But this is going to be the first time that we don't talk about what will you do when potential adversity hits. Now we're talking about what are you going to do now? And this will allow us to find out. And I think it becomes a very important part of the storyline and a chapter in the early Kevin O'Connell era as the Vikings coach.
Yeah, it's like for years and years, that Lions game was kind of a half a bye week, right? Just not that it was a pushover. I mean, they almost lost to the Lions twice last year, but yeah, that is a Lions team that they're 4-4 in their last 8 games. Jared Goff has kind of reverted back to being, in a good way, reverted back to being the guy that he was in Los Angeles with the Rams. He's thrown his last 7 games. He's thrown 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 105 passer rating. So you're not just going to get to exhale and stomp the Lions out. And then you got a London travel week. You're kind of just, again, 3-3 going into the bye would be a massive win for this team with a new head coach. And then you're sort of set up with you got a bunch of home games the second half of your schedule. And you should be able to take advantage. But you got to get to the bye week with all 4 wheels intact. So, Dex?
I'll piggyback off Judd's statement and say that it's time for a vibe check. It's time for a vibe check with the Minnesota Vikings. So they finally lost a game. They lost ugly. So how does Kevin O'Connell respond? It was obviously silly to assume they weren't going to go 17-0. They were eventually going to get punched in the mouth. They got punched pretty damn hard in Philadelphia. And yesterday's loss kind of felt a lot like the old regime, right? Still plenty of opportunities. You had chances to come back, but you still shot yourselves in the foot on both sides of the football. So can KOC respond in a positive way against the Lions? Which kind of hole will they dig themselves out of? Kevin O'Connell referenced the 5 weeks last year where the Rams basically went without a win and they still were a Super Bowl contender, so they were able to get out of that. But the vibes around the Vikings for basically the last 7 months, as the kids would say, were immaculate, right? The vibes were immaculate. Everything was positive, and we're going to change this culture and change everything, and things are going to be great. Yesterday was the first probably sour taste that Vikings fans have felt since probably, the end of the regular season, basically. It was basically 6 months of, all right, we're excited for this new regime. You kicked the Packers' butt on week 1. All right, now it's a vibe check time. You got punched in the mouth pretty hard against Philadelphia. How do the Vikings and how does KOC and Kwesi respond?
I'm trying so hard to not just overreact to an atrocious, ugly performance, but this truly does happen to almost every team. on Purple Daily, I brought up the Buffalo Bills of last season with you guys, and as we were changing over to record Mackie and Judd, I did a little bit more digging. So the Buffalo Bills were, again, excellent last year. Third highest scoring offense, number one scoring defense. They got not smoked, but they got beat at home in week 1 by a Ben Roethlisberger-led Steelers team. Later in the year, so they were at one point, they were 7-4, sort of falling. Then they lose to the Patriots 7-5 in that game where New England, didn't they run the ball like all but 2 snaps or something in that windy game? I think that was last year. Mm-hmm. And then the week after that, they got beat in overtime by the Bucs. They lost a home game to the Colts 41-15 on November 21st last year. And this is one of the best teams in the NFL, a team that's a Super Bowl favorite this year. It happens. So I think I'm trying to separate the it happens nature of last night's loss with, okay, can you bounce back and not have some of these things be a trend? I want to add to the forward-looking portion of this discussion. My next statement is the schedule is already changing dramatically. So you've got, we do our picks after the draft, how many wins the Vikings going to have, and then when the season starts, we do the picks, and then once you get usually like a month or 2 of games, you start to figure out who the teams are. It's been 2 weeks, and you can already say, well, Detroit's definitely not a pushover. And Miami is a high-octane, ridiculous offense with receivers that are almost impossible to cover. But then on the flip side, you can say, but the Arizona Cardinals are kind of a mess coming out of the bye in Week 8. The Dallas Cowboys, who knows who their quarterback's going to be, Week 11 when you play them in November. The Colts look like more of a disaster than maybe people thought at the beginning of the season.
Right.
So the Giants might be more feisty than you thought with new head coach and Saquon Barkley being healthy. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know that it has shaken out to be like a harder schedule. I think you're swapping some teams that you thought were going to be better for some teams that, on the flip side. But I guess it's interesting to see how the Vikings schedule is already. Maybe that Eagles game, you thought, the Vikings and Eagles are kind of the same. And then after last night, you're like, actually the Eagles are one of the best teams in the NFL. So we'll see how it continues to shape shift this Vikings schedule.
I think 2 games in, the most important thing in this league also is how you judge your team and yourself. So it's not like, game 1 was great. Packers, you beat them. They were hurt. Game 2 was a disaster. I think it's more what you're trying to, and this is probably true for about the first month of the season. It's what you learn about yourself. And I would say that the 2 key words for today for the Vikings are adversity and resiliency, because that's really the key thing, right? How do you now bounce back? It's why I was disappointed that last night things went south after Irv Smith dropped that ball, because as we talked about on PD, when Irv Smith drops that ball, it's adversity within the game. And how do you respond? Do you say, oh my God, we just dropped a touchdown pass, we're screwed? Or you know what, screw it, we're going to go right back. And it felt like that they got thrown off by that play down 21-7, not working. So I really believe that with the game against Detroit, it's not like, well, Philly's great and the Packers stunk, blah, blah, blah. I think it's this. I think it's how do you as a team internally bounce back now? And it's why Cousins scares me, because I don't consider him to be a great bounce back guy in games, but I will say this, he has bounced back before after time off. So you're right, Phil, he could come back on Sunday against Detroit and absolutely be great, and it wouldn't be surprising. But how do you get him within the confines of a game to bounce back? That's my question.
That's a valid point, that in game it often feels like once things start going in a certain direction for him, he doesn't just snap out of it. And there's that's one of the things I love about Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen. Rodgers can be this way too, by the way, just like Kirk, where, if the game starts going in one direction, then that's kind of the way it's going to go. But there's a bunch of other top quarterbacks, Brady probably most notably, where he'll have a terrible first half of a Super Bowl and then all of a sudden just go gangbusters and lead his team on a game-winning drive. What is it about those guys that they can just not care about what happened in the first half? And it's an it factor, right? It's it's an intangible thing that you can't really measure with statistics on Pro Football Reference. It's just the ability to say, bleep it, I'm going to still enforce my will on this game.
So I think it is this, and this is a very tough thing. I think it's the ability to detach yourself from the previous moment. I think Kirk gets caught up in the whole game. Like the whole game to him is flowing, and it's either going great or it's going bad. I think what the great quarterbacks do is they've got the same mentality as the great closers in baseball did, which is, I blew the save last night. I don't care. But I mean, that's simple to say, and I think as a person, hard to do. But the great ones can have a terrible game and say, you know what? I need one good quarter or one good drive. And I think for Kirk, that is a very tough thing.
Yeah, that's it's been a thing. I think we're back to Judd here.
Yeah.
Statements.
Statement on the offense and in particular, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook looks slow. Now, in the first game, in fairness, against the Packers, he had 20 carries, 90 yards, a 4.5 yard average. Pretty good day there. Last night, though, he had 6 carries, 17 yards, 2.8 per carry, a long of 6, and he looks slow. And I wonder, with all that he's been through, for a player at his position now, he's not young. I just wonder if we are getting to the point in his career where this is the very reason why guys at his spot are considered far more disposable, and there is no longer a reliance among the smart teams around the league on this. This back's been great. We've got to keep him. It just feels like Dalvin Cook could be trending in the wrong direction, and my fear there is, if that's the case, it's a quick decline. It's not a long decline.
And the contract still has a bunch of guarantees and cap ramifications for the next, I think, 2 or 3 years. But you look up and all of a sudden he's 27 years old. This is his 6th year in the NFL. You aren't guaranteed any level of health as a running back with as much usage as he has had the last 4 years. Once you get to be 27 in your 6th year in the league, again, let's see how it plays out. But it's not like he's playing hurt right now. He's fresh off the entire offseason.
Yep.
And you're right. There's something that doesn't look as explosive about him in the first couple games. His long run, by the way, is 16 yards in the first 2 games, which is seems kind of un-Dalvin Cook-like. Again, small sample size alert all around here. He could have an explosive game against the Lions and maybe, I guess he just got off to a slow start. I don't know. Before we get to Dex's next statement here, the Vikings victory candle has been distinguished. Is there like a Vikings coping candle with Spiral Light?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. It's called, guys, Judd's Purple Positivity Candle, and it is there to not only celebrate wins. So, like, the Packers win was great, right? But the Purple Positivity Candle exists to calm you as well. So last night when you were watching that debacle and you're like, this is terrible, this is awful, and you're throwing stuff around and people are telling you to calm down, that's where you go and get your Spiral Light Judd's Purple Positivity Candle, and you light it, and you know what happens? You're one with the game. You're one with the world. You are feeling good. Spiral Light, it's a great gift. But again, the Vikings candle, the Purple Positivity Candle in particular, that's the place to start. SpiralLightCandles.com. SpiralLightCandles.com. Check them out.
Fall golf season is very much approaching here, Dex. You were reading the forecast of low 60s this weekend in the Twin Cities area.
I can't wait.
I seriously can't wait as well. Let's see here. Looking at a high for the Twin Cities on Saturday, just 72 degrees. On Sunday, a high of 65. You can get out around right before the Vikings play the Lions for a noon kickoff on Sunday. And I would go to the Meadows at Mystic Lake, an award-winning 18-hole public golf course, a great golf shop, the Meadows Bar and Grill, and the patio, whether you want one outside to enjoy that fall weather and enjoy the great scenic area that is the Meadows at Mystic Lake, or you stay in front of the bar like Judd likes to do. He likes to get out his bar stool. He stays right there. He's not going to go out and swing a golf club, but he will drink plenty of beer at the Meadows at Bar and Grill. Book your tee time now and book your experience. GolfTheMeadows.com to learn more. golfthemeadows.com to learn more.
All right, Dex, back to you for statements here.
All right, my statement is I'm waiting on someone here. So week 1 was the Justin Jefferson show. That was clear. And to Judd's point, a quietly productive day from Dalvin Cook in the week 1 win against the Packers. But where is the rest of this offense here? So through 2 games, Adam Thielen has 88 yards, and a lot of that came in garbage time yesterday. KJ Osborne has just 39 yards. 36 yards for tight end Irv Smith, and had the worst drop of the season, obviously. Kene Nwangwu's not being used. And meanwhile, we have 23 touches so far this season for Alexander Madison. I love that Johnny Munt is finding a little bit of a role here, but this offense was supposed to be pretty damn good. And so far through 2 weeks, outside of Justin Jefferson, I can probably make the case the Vikings offense hasn't really lived up to its full potential. So I'm waiting on someone here to make the case. And they targeted Jefferson 12 times, I believe, yesterday, right? And Darius Slay had him locked down. A couple, obviously, holding calls early that probably delayed some of those catches. But waiting on someone else in this Vikings offense to explode. It's been underachieving through 2 games. I'm waiting on someone.
I think I'm just pulling up the targets through 2 games here. I think there's way too high of a percentage of targets in the passing game going to running backs and tight ends. That feels very much like the Kubiak, Mike Zimmer offense. Now, this thing looks different. There's different route concepts. I'm not comparing the 2 offenses. But the guys who are getting the ball right now, Dalvin Cook is the second most targeted player on offense. Irv Smith has 10 targets. Johnny Munt has 6 targets through a couple games, which is more than KJ Osborne.
My God,
I don't need Dalvin Cook to have more targets than KJ Osborne. So right now, 76 targets. You got 11 to Cook. You got 16 to tight ends. That's 27. 5 more to a backup running back. That's 32. So it looks like, and then Ben Ellefson and CJ Ham have a couple. So right now, about half of your targets are going to running backs, tight ends, or backup tight ends, or a fullback. It just seems like you're running 3 wide receiver sets on a regular basis. How is KJ Osborne not more involved in this thing? Is it Kirk that's not getting the ball to him? I mean, last night you had, I think it was 11 targets to your running backs, and that felt like there's some pressure, check down, sort of bail out. There are some screens that got blown up, and those count as targets, but they're getting the ball to Jefferson enough.
Right.
He's got 11, 12 targets a game.
Right.
But there's a second, third receiver here that probably need to get more involved than the tight ends and running backs in this offense.
Well, I mean, Kirk is, from what we were basically told by O'Connell, Kirk is going to the line of scrimmage with 2 plays. So, he's got options there. It's supposedly not just one. So, I don't know.